The screencast for question 9.5 B18. First of all, split up the question. You can see that we have two debts and they have to be repaid. There's a debt of $1,400 which is due today and one of $1,600 which you are supposed to pay in 5 years' time. And our creditor has agreed to let us repay the first one in 18 months' time and the second one in 4 years' time, but with different interest rates. The interest rate for the debts is 11.5% compounded annually, and for the replacement payments it's 11% compounded quarterly, and the focal date is 18 months from today. Set up the timeline with today here. You're supposed to pay back $1,400, and in 5 years' time you're supposed to pay back $1,600. The focal date is 18 months or a year and a half after today, and that's when you repay 1x, and 2.5 years after the focal date, or 4 years after today, you repay the second x. Now we have the two borrowings of $1,400, we can call that E1, and $1,600 E2. We bring both back to the focal date. The first is a future value problem, and the second is a present value problem. First of all, E1 is the future value of $1,400 for 1.5 years at 11.5% compounded annually. And E2 is the present value of $1,600 for 3.5 years, because there are 3.5 years between the focal date and 5 years at 11.5% compounded annually. So at the focal date, E1 plus E2 equal these two amounts, and please check that you can do those calculations. Now they're to be repaid by X dollars on the focal date and another X 2.5 years after the focal date. The first X carries no interest because it's on the focal date, and therefore the t, the time, is 0, so it's just X. The second one is a present value problem because the X occurs 2.5 years after the focal date. So here is the present value problem. The x, 1 plus 0.11, notice the new interest rate, it's compounded quarterly, and so the n is 2.5 times 4. Now we can set up our equation. 2741.2, that's E1 plus E2 equals just x, plus the present value of the second x, which comes to 0.76x. I can simplify by adding x to 1.76x, so 2741.2 equals 1.76x. Now I divide both sides by 1.76, and it comes to 1557.5. So you can repay it by two equal payments of 1557.5 on the focal date. Thank you.